So this took me 3 attempts to try and print this model. I had difficulties on the first 2 prints. One was from a power failure, but let's take a look at one. Started using it as a paint palette, but yeah, I started this one. The power went out and came back on. I don't know if you can see it, but it started lifting up off the print bed, and on that side also. Basically it was this way, so it was mainly the front of the bed and the back of the bed, kind of where it was lifting up at. So it was nice and thick, well, solid anyway, so I started using it as a painter's palette. The second attempt, I'm not sure what happened. This is the first time I am trying to print something in dynamic quality. I always just use regular quality, but I decided to do this in dynamic quality, and I don't know what happened on this one particularly. You can see the layers shifting, especially right there in the middle. They just kept shifting out, and the reason for the filler was after it failed, because this one, I don't know if you can tell, yeah, it started lifting up a little bit too on the bed, not quite as much as the first one, and it just was making a sweep on the print head, and the whole thing moved off the bed. So I don't know if it was moving the whole time and what caused the layer shifts like that. But yeah, so I'm kind of glad it failed and stopped where it did, because it uses quite a bit of filament. But as I was saying, started filling in some of the holes, because a lot of this was, you could still see the supports through it and everything. And I just finished my action figure of myself that I made and hadn't created a base for it. Thought this might make a good base and kind of put it on there, and I was like, it's a little too big. So I went and made the other base that I did. Go and check out that video if you haven't seen it. I'll have to post some pictures on here of the base. I don't think I did. But yeah, this one just... So I might use this for something else later on. Just cut all this off and use it for something else, because the base isn't too bad in itself. And then the final third attempt finally came out, dynamic quality. I'll have to look again, see how long it took. I think it was 9-10 days to print, because I left it at 25% speed, just let it go. Did the infills at 10% this time, and that really helped. There was no wobbling or any failure on the supports, and they came off pretty easy till I started taking them off around this area, and the model snapped, came off. As you can see, it broke straight across here and then down at her wrist, and that came off. So finished removing the supports, glued it back down, and then covered it with some super hard Mod Podge, and then was trying to also cover up some of these imperfections there. I guess it was having an issue on those layers there, I'm not sure. And yeah, there were some imperfections there too. So we filled that up with some Mod Podge. We'll see how it does, but just went ahead and sanded down a little bit, getting rid of the supports, gunk that was left over from the supports, and then going to give it a coating of filler primer and start the smoothing process after that. But this base, you can tell I haven't cleaned my build plate yet because it just came off, finished yesterday. But covered it, the whole build plate, with the purple glue, and that really helped keeping the base down. So it's nice and flat and smooth on the bottom. No lift ups or anything. But overall, it did take a long time from what I'm used to. Like I said, haven't printed in dynamic quality before, but I wanted to keep it going, you know, at a steady pace, kind of slow. So it did take a little long, but I'm happy with the results. A lot of good detail, minimal layer lines so far. Hopefully the filler primer will fill that up quite a bit. Not too worried about the rock structure. As you can see on the back of this one, see how it didn't have that shelf on it like the other one did. Just kept separating. But yeah, just not worried about the rocks as far as filling and sanding and smoothing those, as they're, you know, rocks. Know what I'm doing with the bottom part here. Still haven't figured out the lamp at this point yet, or the lamp shade point. I have a couple ideas, still working through it, see what I can do. But yep, I'm gonna go spray some filler primer on this one and get to the smoothing process. Alright, she's been sanded and deburred. 2 coats of filler primer and then a flat black base coat primer. Be doing something different down here, so wasn't worried about that. Did it last night in the dark, so did miss a few spots, but that's no big deal. There, and on her head, but no biggie. This is just going to help add some depth to the coloring. Went ahead and drilled the hole for the lamp post, and the hole for the power switch, power cord, and then underneath made a hole for access for the wiring, and then additional holes to add some weight to the base, because this thing is very light and would be easily pushed or tipped over. Well, probably not tipped over, maybe once the lamp post is on, but just very light, easy to push and move around, so I wanted to add some weight to it. But now I'm going to start painting. Airbrush, I'm going to start with the rocks first, because I think those will be the easiest to mask off once it's painted, instead of trying to mask all the little details on her and then painting the rocks. So I'm going to do the rocks first and then work on Ariel afterwards. So did the rocks and then went ahead and painted her body and hair. As you can see, a little quick overview. Well, here she is. Got her airbrushed. Got the skin tone. The hair. The hair took a while. Just getting that black covered up enough to get that vibrant red hair. And then did the rocks. Started with a peppercorn gray. And then went over it with, I believe, a steel gray. Yeah, steel. And then did a light coat of, I believe it was the coffee latte, to give it a little bit of a brown look. did the skin tone in an appropriate coral color. Same thing I used on my Mandalorian statue. I think it makes a good skin tone color. And now we're going to try to paint the seashells and the tail. I'm going to use a method I have not tried, and we will see how it goes. So start painting her seashells. Use some masking tape, and the biggest thing was some silly putty to help get around the crevices and curves and everything. Phenomenal trick to use is to mask everything. And not really using a paint here, it's a combination of mica powder, purple mica powder, medium, and then some reducer. Getting the silly putty off here. I think it came out good. And here's how I made it, just using a medium gloss base, adding the mica powder, and then a little bit of reducer, and threw it in the airbrush. And I'm using this for the tail. I believe it's a grass green for her tail. And there it is, painted up. And then her face started out like this. Got some critique from the wife and sister-in-law, said she looked creepy. So I went back and redid it, made her eyes bigger, and actually looked at a reference photo. Here's the base done. I got her finished painting. Got the face done. Had to go back and redo that. The first one, she looked kind of creepy. Her pupils and irises were too small. And a couple of family members gave their critiques on that. Did that, and then added the sand base. Just mixed some play sand with Mod Podge, and then spread it out on the base, and then went through with my fingers, kind of pinching it up, trying to give the ripples in the sand from the waves. And then add a little bit more sand on the rocks, and then added some plants on the seabed. And then on the base, was trying to go for just like a water with sun reflections on it. And some areas it's not too bad, but like here it's a little too thick and cluttered, I guess you could say. But some areas weren't too bad, but I think it's just a little too much some places. So I think I'm gonna redo it, try again, maybe do it. I did all this with the paint airbrush, but I might just do a base layer with the airbrush and then go back in with a paintbrush and do all the reflections and kind of tone it down a little bit and see how that does. Yeah, we'll give it a try and see what we come up with. Got the base filled in. Just used scrap bits of metal and some sand and covered it with epoxy. And then here I am painting the mast for the light using the same technique I used on the base. Used turquoise and a light blue and just did random spots of each color, blended them together, and then went back with a white, mixed it up with some of the paint in the bowl, and just mixed it in the bowl, just trying to keep a consistent color scheme going, and then just use the white to make highlights as far as the reflections in between each of the blended colors. And then I'll go in, use this little piece of paper as a stencil of sorts to add that white or mixed white, to add those reflection lines. And then after I airbrush it, I'll go back in with a paintbrush and just use pure white and add some highlights to those white sun reflection lines. So overall, the base anyways was 99.9% airbrushed, other than the painted white highlights on the stem and the base and the details on her face. Everything else I airbrushed. The key to these sun reflections was just making them random, non-uniform, not straight, just kind of mimicking nature. And just adding a little bit of blue mixed with some of the white. Just accents around those bright white stripes. Just trying to create shades and shadows and various colors and keeping it within the spectrum of watercolor, sea color, ocean colors. And there she is, all done on as far as the base goes. Did add a couple of seashells, not seashells, but sand dollars that I found at Hobby Lobby while I was there. Added those to the base as well, but in a little bit more plants to the back there at the pole. And then finally decided to do a faux stained glass lampshade, and figured the easiest way to do it would be paint it on a flat piece of acrylic, and then just heat it up and bend it. So stenciled out the characters and painted those up, and then went back, added some circles for bubbles, just using a paint marker for that. And for the paint on the characters and the rest of it, Hobby Lobby is not carrying what do you call it, the stained glass paint anymore. So these, I used a all surface matte acrylic, and it said it could be baked to make it waterproof, which was good because when I heat up this plexiglass, I didn't want it coming off with the heat. And then just going in after making the bubbles and adding the inside pieces for the stained glass, and just went and painted those. Used about 3 or 4 solid straight colors out of the bottle, and then mixed up, I think, 3 or 4 other ones of various degrees and shades of color. That way no two pieces were the same color sticking next to each other. And then just doing random shapes, kind of making wavy, ocean wave kind of lines, I guess. And here it is finished. Got everything painted, details added. Make sure I took a lot of pictures and video of it, just in case I screwed it up when I was trying to heat form it. A little bit of light, and you can see it under the light. Here it is all laid out, and just hoping and praying it didn't mess up any of the paint when I go to heat form it. And here I go starting, just using the shade as the base and clamp down one end of it, and then using my heat gun to heat up the acrylic and bend it around the shade. Now this turned out okay, especially being my first time. The bottom did have some waves in the acrylic, and we'll just chalk that up to ocean waves and whatnot. It wasn't perfect, but if I was going to do this again, probably will, maybe sometime later on something different, but I would make a jig of some sort, a slightly smaller diameter than the lampshade itself, and then also buying a lot more clamps, and then also just taking a little bit more time with the heat and rolling it over. But I think it turned out well, other than a little bit of waves, like I said, at the bottom, a little disproportionate at the bottom, and it was still kind of springy, so I had to use a lot of 5-minute epoxy and hot glue to bend it around and keep it around the wire frame. But I did go back several times with the heat gun and straightened out a lot of the bottom, made it a little bit more round and uniform as the top than what it originally was. Have to get a little more practice doing that. And then here it is clamped up. We're getting some glue to that wire frame. Like I said, I'll have to get a lot more clamps next time. Main concern was just getting it glued well enough at the seams to where it didn't pop open. And here's some glamour shots. Thanks again, guys, for watching one of my cheesy videos. Please like and subscribe, and don't forget to hit that notification button for future videos.